So I think he wants you to discuss who's who in the family. I can't even remember. Well, I don't know, like who's, all the family background, who's
Relatives.
names.
The
Who are the Heffernans, the Pattons, the ladies, the Tobins?
There's enough of them, weren't there?
Yeah, who's who on your
You
side?
got any
Ladies and
trash on
Heffernans?
anybody? You got any trashy gossip on anybody?
Can I tie this little boy somewhere else? Or
Huh?
can I tie him somewhere else?
Well, who
Yeah.
came over first?
Probably.
family.
My father, I guess.
Who's your
My
father?
grandmother came over on a sailing boat, I know that.
Yeah.
7
Who's
weeks.
your father, Pop?
Which is she? Is she a Patton? That was a
It
Patton?
was a Duggan,
Oh, that was a Duggan.
No.
She was Patton after she got married, she was a Duggan. She was a Duggan, I know she
I
came
gotta
over
get out
on a
further than this
sailing
baby
boat.
carriage.
Well, we're talking
About
history,
7
good quiet.
weeks. She was about 7 weeks or something on the ocean, and she went out near Aurora to a farm. It was before the Chicago fire, when she was in Aurora, that she must have come over when the fire was suddenly, must have been in the late 60s sometime. She didn't tell, too many stories about it, but she wasn't in Chicago at the time of the fire. She was out west near Aurora, farms. David knows about some of those relatives that were out there. About that.
Well, where did Patton come from?
P-A-W-N.
Oh, Patton.
My grandfather, well, I don't know too much about his family, but he had come over. He was not born in Ireland. He was born in Canada. I think it was London, Ontario. And it's where my grandmother met him. That I don't know. Don't know too much about it. My brother might know more, but he should pay more attention. Stories what my grandma never talked. His mother talked about Ireland because she came from there.
Oh, she came over on a boat?
Well, yeah,
She came over on a
she came over on a
Down on
boat,
a sailing boat, she came later.
and relatives from down in the country in Illinois were to be in New York to pick
You
her
have
up.
a long story, you can tell me.
Yeah, the storm blew the boat away from New York Harbor, and it came down and landed in Baltimore.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
So that's how Plymouth Rock became.
When Mother got off the boat in Baltimore, all she saw were all those black dockheads, and she thought they had gone to Athens. So when she got off the boat at immigration, she wanted to know where she was. And they said Baltimore, and my mother, wasn't going to go back to New York. So she said to a big Irish policeman, how do I get to Chicago? And he said, there's the railroad station over and go and buy a ticket. So she went over, she's 18 years old.
Yeah.
She went over and bought a ticket to Chicago. And then when she got to Chicago, she knew there from letters that there were some girls working for Marshall Field in their home. So she got off and said, how would she get in touch with Marshall Fields, to another big Irish policeman, who said, what would you be doing there? And she said, well, I have some friends there. So he told her how to get to the Marshall Field residence. Yeah, no, maybe, I don't know. She didn't say, no, I think she, I don't know. At any rate, she got there, and they put her to work. In the meantime, all hell is breaking loose in New York. So fortunately, when they heard about the boat,
I think you're regressing, Toby, going back to playing.
the people
Not
who
old
were
enough to be in
meeting,
your second child,
in
but
New
just
York.
regressing to the first one.
he ran the farms for the Marshall Field in Plainfield, Illinois.
But who's this now? Who ran the farms?
Well, he was my mother's uncle.
Oh, the guy was supposed to be in New York.
Yeah, and they had gone to New York, he and his wife, to pick up. And so,
Imagine there was a lot of commotion in the family when she just disappeared.
Yeah, just didn't show up.
When
civilization, they figured out that if, you know, they checked with immigration in Baltimore, who said, well, they didn't know what happened, she went through immigration. And then the only thing they could figure was maybe she had brains enough to go to Chicago, you know. But how she would do it, they didn't believe an Irish gal would know how to get to Chicago.
Well, the Irish had the one advantage of speaking the language. If you came
Yeah.
from Italy or Germany or something, she
And
knew
Irish
that was,
cops.
Irish
yeah,
cops.
they'd understand, but even a fraud, they'd understand.
Which makes it different. Well, at any rate, they worked out somehow the people she would know in Chicago were some of these.
The Marshall Field.
Yeah, because I think the ones down the country who knew that they had their own farm and they were fairly wealthy. It was the son of the people who were coming to get my mother. It was their son who became aide to Teddy Roosevelt and became the first federal judge out in.
Well, a circuit rider you told us about, is it?
Yeah, he was a Rough Rider.
Yeah.
What? Oh, the Rough Riders? Oh, I heard about them. The Rough Riders?
Yeah, for Teddy Roosevelt. But didn't this guy become a circuit rider when he became a judge?
That
Well,
was
when
down
Roosevelt
in-
got elected,
That was down in New Mexico, wasn't it?
yeah,
Yeah, he was a
Yeah.
circuit rider down in Mexico, the judge.
well, he was the first federal judge appointed in New Mexico.
Yeah. What was his name, do you remember?
David Leahy, he was
Yeah,
named
he's a
after
Leahy.
my grandfather.
Oh, so, yeah, okay. So when your mother finally got to Marshall Fields and finally hooked up with the farm family, how did she
Farm
meet,
family.
how did she meet Heffernan Senior? Who was he, John?
No, you mean
Your
my father?
Yeah.
James.
James, Jim Heffernan, big Jim Heffernan. Was he already here?
Yeah, he was already here.
He was born here.
I suppose
he
what she
wasn't.
did was come up to
He
Chicago.
wasn't born here.
Oh, no, we
He
wasn't.
came over to.
Oh, that's
That's another story.
yeah, that's his mother, my grandmother, owned, her people were part of the Moors, you know, who was a poet.
Thomas.
So they say.
Yeah. Well, at any rate,
What county was that?
well,
Gary.
they were both from Cary. The Heffernans are ordinarily from Limerick. Well, my grandmother was evidently quite a woman. You know, she owned
Which
this
grandmother
farm
are you talking
and
about?
ran,
This is the
and
Heffernan.
ran the thing.
In Ireland.
Yeah, and was pretty good. And my grandfather was a gentleman. He rode to the hounds, he went to the races. And he
Mark
never,
Tracy was saying that
presumably
was
never
his-
did a tap of work at his.
That's what Mark Shipley would like. He
Yeah.
would like that part of the family if you
So,
heard you telling
I
that
guess he
story. I'd take him
One
for
of the-
whatever great-grandfather.
One of the stories was a relative, Ottawa was almost the center for a lot of the Irish who came over. And what the biggest hotel in Ottawa during the days of Abraham Lincoln was called the White Hotel. And White's also had a racetrack. And so the people just come from Chicago and stay at the hotel and go to the White racetrack. Well, when he was back in Ireland, old White and my grandfather had been pals. So my grandfather had a killing of the Dublin races. And
He was
he
hanged.
just decided on the spur of the moment to go down and book passage to America without even telling my grandmother. So he came through Chicago, never got hold of his sons, went straight down to Ottawa.
Oh, he told me this story, yeah.
And my grandmother figured out,
She wrote a letter.
she wrote a letter to my father, and my father was not very fortunate enough. He went down and got it and took him back had been here for a month or so before
Yeah.
they caught up with him.
Well, who do we have here so far? Your father, he came over on a boat. While your,
Oh,
well, the
that's
parents
a
were still in
story.
Ireland. But,
That's a story too. There was a couple
Sorry.
working for my grandmother in Harvard. He was out in the fields and she was in the office. So my grandmother paid the passage for them to bring my father and his sister to Chicago. And then, they had the passage to go home. But when this couple got here, they sent the money back to my grandparents and stayed on. But then they, were almost felt conscience stricken about supervising my Aunt Bridge and my father. Their name was Enright. And their son was the first major gangster labor leader killed in Chicago, Mossy.
Mossy?
Yeah, that was.
Well, what happened to Aunt Bridget?
Oh, well, she was around for years and years.
Died before they.
My sister went after. She worked on the elevated mines.
Oh,
She was a
what,
kid.
Aunt Mary watched over for him?
Aunt Mary took care of her pretty much.
She had kids?
No, she was never married. When she retired and was trying to get Social Security, she had never become a citizen. And she was raising hell with the Internal Revenue Service and everybody else. You'd think I was a damn foreigner. I've been voting for over 50 years.
That's Chicago.
And Mary had to really go jump through hoops to straighten the whole thing out.
Well, what, now Mom, let's see, we
I
got
don't
your
have
mother.
stories like that.
Your mother was born here, and
My mother and father both were.
yeah, the grandmother on your mother's side came over in a boat.
Yeah.
What about your father's side?
Oh, well, they were dead. They were all dead before I was born. I guess it was his mother and father. They both, somebody married, Tobin married a Tobin back in that family
Jeez.
somewhere, yeah.
Does that
They
account for
came
some of
over
the
during
problems
his
we have?
family, my father's family came, or father, or whatever, I don't know about his mother, came over, some of them during the potato famine in Ireland. They came over earlier, so these stories are way back and I don't know too much about them. But, some of them went out to California, a couple of brothers, the gold rush was right at that time. They never came to Chicago. His own father was up, he was born in Kenosha, Wisconsin, they were up there. A couple of brothers went out to California during the gold rush, and some of them were logging up in around Ludington, Michigan. When we rode around the lake, we found some graves at a few cemetery up near Ludington.
What names were those? Those are all Tobins?
Those have been Tobins, yeah. And I don't think there was any other names.
Is that why I've been called Toby?
No, actually, you're Tobias. You could switch it to Tobin if you want to have a family name.
Well, tell them about when we were taking that train.
Oh, in California, yeah, this California's effort.
We're going
The
through
train
that area where the gold rush was.
Yeah, the
There's
Yeah.
a Tobin
Fraser
station.
River goes.
That thing's
Oh,
not
yeah.
recording right now, Dad.
Yeah,
Your battery pack's right here.
I'm not using it.
But I didn't have very many stories about my father's family, as I said, it was way back.
And up in Wisconsin, there's a Tobin Road.
Yeah.
Or their
My-
farm.
yeah,
Named
well,
after our Tobins?
he was born on a farm out from near Kenosha. When I say Kenosha, it was not the town then, it was out in the country, it's in town
Just
now.
near there in southern Wisconsin.
Yeah, and, and there were, all his brothers and sisters, that's where he grew up in Kenosha. And there is a Tobin Road up there named after that family. And there are 40 million different cousins, I can't keep track of all those.
Well, so how did you meet Belle Patton? That was her name.
Yeah.
She was a teacher.
Oh,
She
yeah,
started?
that's how my mother met my father, she was teaching in the school where he was principal,
Was it in Chicago or in the county?
Chicago.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that was in Chicago, the Hayes School.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, how did he get to be county superintendent?
And that's a fabulous story.
Well, you know it better than I do, they got a petition signed and some people want them to.
You know, in those days in Chicago, politics was all Democrat. And whatever happened in the primaries was really the big to-do. So, there was a guy
The
running
county
for all.
wasn't, the county was Republican.
Huh?
The county was
Oh,
Republican.
yeah,
And my father was superintendent in the county, that was
yeah,
not
but
in
here's how
the
they
city of
got on the
Chicago.
ticket. They were up in Michigan City in the cottage during the summer. And there was a hot aldermanic race going on. And the guy thought, since Mr. Tobin was so popular, he went and had petitions signed and had his own independent ticket, Tobin and me for both of them. And when Mr. Tobin came back, it was too late to, he was furious, being used. But he had to let his name stay, and he got elected. Well, as it turned out, the teachers from Ely School and all the kids went out campaigning. But also, one of the teachers was the niece of the head of the Democratic Party. And she threatened never to speak to him again, and he said, but we already have a candidate too. She said, not anymore. So, there was a lot of turncoating. But then, when Mr. Tobin got elected, he really didn't care whether he stayed or not, wasn't too sure how long the guy could be a Democratic county superintendent. But he made stick that the only people that he would use as patronage would be the clerks and stenographers and that sort of stuff. Those they could have. But his professional staff,
No teachers. I mean, no professional staff right in the county office.
his professional staff would be his personal picks and they
Well,
wouldn't
so,
vote.
he was elected by a few times, he was in, he physically died in
He was
32.
in from 1910
It
to
was the year I was born,
1932.
I was born between the primary and the regular election, I guess, yeah. And, it was very unusual for any Democrats to get into the county offices at that time. Well, if it included the city of Chicago, which was Democratic,
Yeah.
but this didn't.
But it didn't, it's just the
No,
outline.
except in schools, it was Cook County, and that was very Republican
Yeah,
all those years.
Still is.
Still, as far as that goes, but even more so then. But he always said he would never have been, it was also Republican years most of the time, the presidential election. Now Wilson was in there, but anyway, he would never have been re-elected or continued if he ran, it was the off year between presidential election for the county office.
oh, so the bandwagon effect
So,
didn't
yeah,
blow him
because
out.
if all the, if it all went.
So he's running on his own
Republican,
effectively,
yeah,
so
it
it was
would've been
just him.
difficult. But he stayed in for all those years, not too many.
But
In
then-
Chicago, yeah, there were plenty of, you know.
But in the rural areas, even the Republicans,
Well, he got to be quite.
he had the
popular.
greatest
Yeah, he.
publicity
Yeah.
stuff going
Yeah,
on.
he got very popular.
Used to ride around the county, putting up signs, and then write letters, seen on the highways and
Oh, well, that
byways.
was a county school on project,
Yeah,
because
but
they
he
started,
started
it
that
was the
4-H
4-H,
clubs.
the guy that worked for him later went to Washington and became the 4-H clubs, but it was the Cook County School Home Project
Yeah.
business that they started.
And he
The
used
kids
to
in
run
grade school had to
festivals.
take, as well as going through, it's like that, what's that school up in Beloit, is it, that still has that college working and
Yeah.
going to school at the same time? He felt that the kids should earn some money and get other training than just the academic stuff, in grammar school this would be.
Oh, in grammar school?
Yeah, this is a,
Oh,
these are in grammar
that's-
school.
They got co-op, cooperative education in college now.
Yeah, well,
Grammar
this was
school
in
is,
grammar school, and the kids all And most of the projects to begin with were like
Making sure there's still covers.
raising
Yeah,
pigs or
raising-
calves or chickens or,
Or their own, vegetables at one price.
it was all that sort of stuff to begin with. But as years went on, then they included even caddying and what else, as it got less country, less
Rural,
rural.
yeah.
Anyhow, everybody had to do this and you had to complete the project. I don't know when they started, about sixth grade maybe. They had to complete a project each year and graduate from this thing in order to graduate from grammar school. And they had signboards, built about so big, like it's a Cook County School project, and then the kid's name, and then whether it was cooking or sewing, which it could be for girls or camp or gardening, whatever, and they put these signs outside their houses. And he used to ride around, I can remember this when I was a young kid, he'd ride around in the old Jeffrey that we had then, and then we'd drive by and he'd take down the names of all these things. If we were just going on a trip when he wasn't doing this, he just honked the horn as he went by, but otherwise he made up these things. Then he sent out a letter, said, seen on the highways and byways of Cook County, Illinois, and he'd send out the names of all these kids with his signboards. They even had a song.
I don't think I ever heard of that one before.
Coming, men and women of County, Illinois, our goal is to achieve in our project work we are brave and true. Can you remember the rest of the word? I can't remember it all now, my brother, but anyhow, when I was a little kid, when my brother was a baby like this, a little later on, my mother would they used to take the bottles and the sterno and all this stuff, and we'd ride around in the car up in the county while he collected all these signs, or took the names down and sent them out. And then they had a banquet to end the year, in the early years. They used to take all the kids to one of the hotels downtown. These kids had never been to the city. It was like, like now, we'll be taking kids from the inner city to see something. They were all country kids. They came in and went to the hotel, and they used to go to see a play, because there weren't very many of them in the early days. They went to see things like a band, up in the clouds, all these musical comments. You had to be too ready as a bush. You got bumped in the head. Did you get a bump in the head from those things? No?
No.
Toby's building a big tower. I think it's gonna topple.
Well, when should we head up to Baltimore?
Good night, kittens. And good night, mittens. Good night, clocks. And good night, socks. Wait, almost done. Good night, little house.
Our publishers, that's done. Oh, nice shot, Jennifer.
We'll all be yelling at once.
No, no. All right,
Hey,
Pop.
you know, Toby's got
We
homework
gotta
to
start
do.
off where we finished yesterday with what got your, I think you were gonna go into your, what got your father into politics. But Ed brought something up, I never heard of the O'Sullivans. Who are the O'Sullivans? The what?
Cousins of,
Is that the people at the farm?
there are 2 or 3 people at the farm, yeah. The Sullivans came from downstate too, didn't they? No? No, yes, don't just do it that funny to the voice. I remember them all. One was a
Their mother
4
was,
boys.
was my mother's sister.
That's right. She was the one they all referred to as the witch, Hannah.
And Han?
Hannah, I guess. or
Hannah?
Hannah.
Was she already at Marshall Field when your mother came home?
No, this was another part of the family, wasn't it?
How could it be his mother's sister and be a different part of the family?
Well, she had a lot of sisters. It wasn't Hannah that was working there.
Oh,
When your mother came over from Ireland,
no.
she had a
Anne
lot of
came
sisters.
later after my mother.
I
And Anne was the youngest.
don't know, she scared, I can remember she scared everybody. She was a, well, she usually wore black, I think, too. She wasn't much to look at.
She was full of religion.
oh, fire and brimstone?
Huh?
Fire and brimstone?
I don't know, they were all afraid of her, until the 4 boys, as I gathered, they talked about it.
Hannah? These were the O'Sullivans?
Hmm?
These were the O'Sullivans?
Well, there was one of those boys that stayed over there in Ireland, wasn't there? Shit, and I
Oh.
How old were they?
Well, see, I had my aunt still on the farm, plus my uncle, John,
Oh, back in Ireland.
chewing on that.
Huh?
You're still chewing on your food, can't hear you. I don't know, that was,
of all the brothers and sisters, the uncle, John, was the most, did more things. He did a fabulous career.
I thought you were talking about the Sullivans.
Oh, well, good looking.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, they're still around,
The Sullivans?
sure, in Scotland.
Well, only two of them. The one that was in the, was it the police department? Frank,
Police,
he
yeah.
died a long time ago, quite a long time ago. And then Jerry the one that was the electrician? And who was the one that was out to, when Sean and all of us went out to, Oakland, you know, that other, for dinner? That one Pat was there, and that whole crowd, and one of those O'Sullivans and his wife, was that Jerry, or? Well, you sound like you didn't even know who they were. It's too early in the morning.
I got confused too about it.
Well, one of them came, we went out to dinner
Car.
in Oakland, and Sean came, and Helen, Pat, and all that, their family, I can't remember the name of the one, and the one who worked downtown. God, it's your family. Well, we went out there to dinner, she worked, not for, well, maybe she did work for Time Money, but anyway, she worked down in City Hall. The little, well, your cousin.
Yeah,
Not gonna
yeah.
get much out of him this morning.
We'll get that story later. Well,
One of the O'Sullivans.
This was a recent news day,
With the
only a
schools?
little while
Was
ago.
a school engineer.
oh, I think I remember him when he was still there when I was working. Yeah. Well, who were the people with the farm you used to go to when you were a kid?
Oh, well, that was an entirely different.
Was that even family?
Bars and,
That was the old lady.
Yeah.
you're just wasting that thing, you're not telling any stories, you're not waking up, you can't even remember your.
That's all right, we'll read you later.
From the country. Mrs. Maher, what we all of us call her, the grandmother, had been raised by my grandfather in Ireland. She was an orphan.
Mhm.
And eventually she came out to America, and way back, almost in the 60s or 70s, somewhere. And she went down to Ottawa,
Mhm.
and there she married a guy by the name of
Runner.
that Maher. And they took an ox and tea, whatever household goods they had, and took the 80 acres of government land down in Grundy County, or Gardner, Illinois. And they built a log cabin, which was still on there when I was a kid.
Oh, still on the property?
Hmm?
Still on the property?
Yeah.
It's a big old farmhouse when I remember. They had
Well,
about
you see,
10 or
yeah,
11
they
kids.
built the farmhouse, but they used the log cabin that was the original place for a laundry room. Just left it close to where the new house was built.
Well, was old Mrs. Maher still alive then?
She was, when I was a
Kid.
she was a ran game, ruled it. She had
I never know
three
them once or
daughters and
twice.
two boys, and she was the boss, and all decisions had to be made by her. And, as she was, must have been a pretty good businesswoman. I got down there, they owned 420 acres, and they kept buying 80s and all around them until they picked up 420 acres.
If they got smart, if it turned into a suburban area of Ottawa, they could have sold it for a bundle in the 70s. Probably worthless now.
Oh, they lived in the suburbs, and
Yeah.
Isn't one of the Mahers still on that farm?
one of Tom's homes. Once in a little
Well,
stop
when
there.
I went down there, the old lady, whatever, she was long since gone. It was one of the sons, they were older than we were. Tom Maher, and Francis was her name, were the ones that were living on the farm, and they had about 10 or 11 kids. All of them were pretty well grown. They're all old people by now, all those Mahers. One was a priest, and one went to, couple of nuns, couple went out to California. They were all over the place, but they were older than we were. You were, most of them, a couple of the younger ones.
Yeah,
might not have been.
The old Mrs. Maher,
But she was long since dead.
she died in my time. But she also,
You were an old kid, you mean.
you know, living on with my grandfather and growing up with my mother and all those girls, she was like a mother to them too. So out here, she used to stick her finger in.
Oh, she was the boss. She tried to be the boss of everything out here.
And then there was a little house across from the big farmhouse where one of the, was a brother, his name was Bat too. Just he and his wife, they had no children, they lived in a small house across the road. I remember that when I went down there. This was when we were, well, Ed went down when he was a kid, he would remember the Maher farm. It was a long time back.
The boy, you know, I was supposed to go down to the company for a guy who was about a kid, about years old when I was. I went down there, I guess I must have been 9 or so. And the kid older than I was still playing with dolls.
Oh yeah, you told me about this.
Tommy Dillon,
Tommy, yeah.
Yeah, well, Joan and Carol and Ed certainly remembered Tommy. He used to come around our house quite a bit,
Was he,
occasionally.
was he still like that when he used to come on
He
later?
finally got married. Poor gal, too, she was
cousin.
always sick.
Didn't you have some story about Tommy Dillon in town with some kids picking on him or something?
Oh, yeah.
Out on the farm, in the country they did.
They were nice kids too, we got to be very friendly, but we had a fight in town. They came on and you know, kind of mimicked, hello Nellie, how are you, Nellie, you know, that's.
Did Tommy Dillon?
Yeah, and I got annoyed and felt they were insulting me too, so I whacked them and we started fighting. The town constable came along. But then the kid turned out to be they were mostly Danes, Norwegians. But the one kid I was fighting happened to be Irish. His name was Halpin. And he was a nice kid, really. He said, gee, we didn't mean you, but everybody picks on Tommy. When he went to high school, one of the kids told me later, one of the guys in school, that the girls all, they used to sneak up on a 3rd floor and eat alone and read or something. And the girls all ganged up to see if he was a boy.
Oh, jeez.
Yes, I humiliated them.
Tough growing up.
They would never tell me about any of these persecutions, but.
His mother was one of the Maher family we talked about.
Just like the old one, huh?
Yeah.
Her husband had died. They owned 160 acres, which they rented out.
Well,
Which
when I
eventually
went
came
down to
Tommy.
Tommy Dillon's before he was married, his town, and it was his mother and Elizabeth Meyer, who was a sister who used to teach in Chicago at one time, but they lived there. Was there another sister? Anyhow, his father had died when he was real young, he was raised by these,
Domineering
yeah,
old ladies.
two aunts. Elizabeth was kinda nice, she's bright and intelligent. Well, anyhow, Tom, well, I don't know what do we call them then? You don't talk about fairies, but they used to, you say that, though, when
Sissies.
somebody said, well, sissies.
Yeah.
Nobody heard of anybody being gay or anything like that, and probably he wasn't, I'm sure he wasn't an actual practicing one, he was just real effeminate and sissified.
Yeah.
Playing with dolls, and he'd come up, well, you used to tell the story, he came to their house, and of course with Matt and Jim and your father around, they couldn't stand him and Tommy coming around, and he'd always come and wonder, what have you got special for me this morning, Mrs. Heffernan, or something else? And,
Well, did Matt and Jim used to go to the farm too, or just you?
Matt went to a
They
different.
went to a different relative down,
and so many of
down
them.
Chesterfield way. Their name was McGrail. One of them is now dean of the University Extension, Educational Extension at the University of Illinois. He's the director of that. There were two sons on that farm. The oldest was my brother Jim's age, and the next one was about my age. But Matt used to go down there, and they were very fond of Matt. Matt was very fond of them too.
Or were they relatives or just friends?
Yeah, they were the same
Oh, yes,
relatives
we
as.
are. They're all cousins of his mother's, somehow or other.
Those are the McGrails. Well, how did your father get into politics? That was what we ended with yesterday.
Well, I would rather gather that somebody sent me the election returns, the wards evidently they weren't very big. I think there were only about 4,000 or 5,000 people in that ward, you know. But today it'll be 30,000.
Which one was it? That was back of the yards?
Yeah, well, you see, they had, at the time when my father ran for board committee, when there were only 31 wards. Now there are 50 in Chicago. 31, and the 31st ward went from one side of the south side of Garfield Boulevard all the way out to Beverly Hills, although Beverly Hills
Wasn't
was
there.
next later, I think. Well, at any rate, it ran as far south as the city limits. And my father was the 30th ward. When the city was remapped, rezoned, the 30th ward, my father's, became the 14th ward. Now, I think my father just wanted to be in it. When they used to elect precinct captains. And along about, well, whenever he ran, that was the first ward organization set up.
What is this, about 1910 or something?
Don't look at me, I didn't know you then. Jim, I don't know anything about when it was then.
Or 19, or later, more towards the war?
Well, it possibly could be 1911, 12.
Yeah.
How old were you? Don't you remember?
Well, I can remember being in grade school.
Well, you would have been in grade school for quite a while.
Yeah, up through
Wouldn't have even
1950,
gotten
up
in
through
there
the war.
until
Yeah.
1912, sure.
Whatever, but around then, right about the war, before
Well,
this
it
was
was,
going.
let's say around 14 or 15, 14. That's, none of us, nobody in the family never talked very much about politics.
Yeah.
With my father, you know. That was always a kind of an off silence, you know. You can't say your father is a board committeeman for fear people will think you're boastful and accuse you of getting favors. There was always this hush stuff. So that, you just never talked about your father, period. You were full of secrets, family secrets, political secrets, don't talk. Somebody's listening. Tell them we were loaded with that kind of. Have kids said to me, your old man is a ward committeeman. I just have to walk away. Couldn't answer. I couldn't say
How
yes.
could something
or
like
no.
that be a secret? I don't
Oh,
understand.
my mother was loaded with this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I know, but it isn't
There
like,
was
what would the neighbors think if something was wrong, or, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's pretty bizarre.
Yeah. I can't imagine that.
Your mother was paranoid, huh?
Probably.
Oh, yeah,
Something.
I think she was a little tough.
Well, before she died, she had a real persecution complex. She thought the neighbors were doing, weird things, or taking the mail or stuff like
I
that.
think she was drinking too.
How old was she? She was pretty young when she died.
Yeah, she was.
62 or 3 maybe? What was she when she died? I think she was in her early 60s somewhere. She did get, I've forgotten that later years the term, but she did get that way. She thought they were talking behind her back or taking the mail or some of those stories. She didn't go out very much in the last year.
No, that was, for somebody who, when she was young, must have been vivacious.
Want to join us at the table, Jennifer?
Better have a seat, might have a picture.
Stick it right between them.
You wanna sit down here for a while? I'm just sit over here, but we can talk and cut out of the way.
Listen.
Oh, don't my shirt there, Kitty.
Whoops.
You're at the tail end of the family history, Jennifer.
Yeah, we're all mixed up. Don't know where we are. Oh, we better push that out. Don't mind you grabbing it.
Oh.
Look at him.
Well, I think we'll have to get a bunch this evening at dinner. We'll get Ed here with his questions and give
You're
Pop a
too
few
quiet
drinks.
this time of the day.
There was one,
Doesn't even
the one
remember.
uncle back in Ireland, that was Uncle John. When he was quite young, he was a writer, went off to London and was with the New Statesman or one of the Manchester Guardian. And he became the political editor, traveled all over Europe. And before World War I, he came back and wrote a long.
He's scared.
I'm sorry. Oh.
Tell a story. Hey, Jen.
Hey.
I should fix her
I was only making noise.
Where were you?
Well, he came back
It's okay.
after a survey of Europe and wrote a long, one of these interpretive pages, that there was going to be a war, and that Germany would be on one side, and England on the other. And of course, Germany and England were all arms around each other at that particular time. And the German ambassador demanded that he be fired for this kind of heresy of breaking up our friendship. And so he was fired. But some wealthy British woman who believed in him bought him some property in Ireland. And he just retired there. And he was quite young. He never married. And he didn't do that. He just wrote letters to people. If I were had half my brothers, I should have kept it. Even as a kid, I knew they were. 96, cooking his own breakfast.
96?
Burned to death.
Well, that's like the story Bill Watson used to tell about Mom's father saying he choked on his mustache and drinking a beer in a bar. It was in the, that was your father, they had the picture with the big mustache. Oh, your grandpa, that's the guy, Bill Watson said. Choked on a mustache drinking a beer in a bar.
He did have that big bushy mustache.
You want a beater, Ron?
That mustache was
Should we
all
give
I-
this thing a pause for a
all I
while?
re- Yeah, all right, the mustache was
We'll
the
get
only
more
thing
stories
I
later,
remember
Pat.
about my grandfather.
Oops. With the what?
The mustache is the only thing I remember about my grandfather.
Did you ever
He
meet
died
him?
when I was about 5. Yeah, he died when I was about 5 or 6. And he used to have beer every night. He would give me a little tiny glass of beer to drink out of it, which I remember
You
getting.
see, Bill Watson must have known about
Yeah,
that.
I got the beer.
Was it here or in
and,
a chair with it on?
also,
Wanna
I
sit in
can
a chair with an
remember
arm?
kissing me and a funny feeling of a big mustache. That's all I remember.
Maybe you did drown in his mustache.
I don't know what really happened to him.
Let me turn this thing off.
Oh, Bill Watson had turned, gloomy, and now that he's retired, the kids tell him he's all back.
Oh, he is? Oh, jeez, we had to have him out. He's
Awesome.
great.
And some,
Also rejoined the family.
Oh.
well, they met him, somebody's wake or something, O'Connor's maybe, I don't remember now. But anyhow, they met him someplace and he was funny.
I'm surprised he's retired. He's not that old, is he?
Who?
Last time I saw, at your 50th anniversary, I saw Billy was just learning how to scuba dive. He was down in the Bahamas with
Yeah,
bloody nose.
he must be
Died and
about
stuff.
what? He's several years old, 2 years or more. How much older than John was Bill? 2 years. Couple years older. No, he wouldn't
No.
be retired. Yes, he was, a couple
Yeah,
years
well.
older than John, but not much more than.
Oh, I took an early retirement, 55 or
Yeah.
something.
Well, Joe's 56 now,
Yeah,
so he'd be 58 or 9.
he's going when I want to go. If I can. I'm counting on Barb to have an income so I can go out at 55.
Yeah, right. Almost breath.
Let me pause this.
It's boo boo and there's Harry. Oh, sick, right on our thing.
Well, there's a little towel right by there someplace, Marcus. Clean her up.
Gathered for Ed's rather dyslexic 35th birthday party. Terry's waving. Well, let's get the birthday boy.
Picturing everything.
35 dyslexic years.
Can we sing happy birthday
Is
to him?
this a
That's a
camera
meter.
or a video?
Give us a smile,
Can we
Ed.
sing
What?
happy birthday to the
What is
camera?
this? This is a camera.
This is home movies, 80s style on videotape.
Happy New Year!
What's up, beef jerky?
We've been filming anyway. We're going to film later. We're getting their story of the family on tape.
You are.
Yeah, it was Ed's suggestion.
Yeah, they've been telling
Neat.
stories.
Yeah.
Are we gonna sing happy birthday?
Good idea. Let me try and get in a position where I get most of you. And we need to be able to see Ed.
At 8 in the morning.
That's alright.
Happy birthday to you. Happy
Birthday to you.
Happy birthday, dear Ed. Happy birthday to you. How old are you?
What?
Stand up and tell us you're ready to cheer.
I can't count
35.
Well, I don't know if my cinema techniques are going to really come out well.
Hello.
Hello. For me, we were playing
Brady,
football.
Brian,
I don't know who was
right
more
there. Brian,
scared.
turn around, give him another hand.
Yeah, I said, you didn't get hurt in that game. I would laugh. It absolutely blew my mind, because he said I wasn't sure of the name. So I asked somebody, and he said, I remembered. And I said, oh my God. I said, I don't have the foggiest notion. He moved away in about
There's a
second year of high school.
There's another hole there.
Somewhere in Connecticut or somewhere. He's a doctor. Do you remember his name?
I've been trying to, I know they have 6
Yeah,
kids.
bunch of kids. MD.
Of course, the other one, all we knew is that one guy running all over.
Dad,
Hey,
Sheila's.
Oh,
She probably wants to wish you a happy birthday.
What was that kid's name before he died?
me down.
The halfback who ran, you know, he went to Michigan, All-American.
Oh, Wally Tennigan.
Huh?
Tennigan from Orland Park. Wally Tennigan. Oh, he
Well,
was a
in
super
school, he was in the backfield when you were a center.
Oh, yeah.
And it didn't make any difference.
Yeah, he was as skinny as you were.
What, at
As a
grammar school?
center?
Yeah.
You get thrown over every time?
When he was in grade school, even when he graduated from 8th grade, he was one of the smaller kids in the class.
Oh, that's nice to know, isn't it, Brian?
Pop was saying it didn't matter though, because they had an all-American halfback who ran all over the place anyways.
No, well, he was ahead of him, that Seneca was ahead of him.
Yeah, Wally Tennigan.
Who's he?
Well, he became a Michigan All-American, you know, he played pro football. He was all through high school, he was running wild too. But on Southern, half after that, I went over to see the senator. The senator would land on his dump, but Wally made a touchdown before the center got up off
So Dad got a lot of publicity. That's a really good center.
I'm sure Dad will think he was a great
Southern
center.
used to win by
I was great.
47
What are you talking about? Our halfback scored every time he went up the middle.
What's that?
That's because of the nose guard. Because the nose guard was still stomping all over me. So
All right, Joyce, well, what stories do you want to get them going on? Do you have any
I have
old ones?
one. I have a story my dad won't tell.
What?
It's about one time he was in school and he was sitting there and he was like a rotten little kid and he had little chewing gum in his mouth and he was blowing big bubbles with it
Do
during
you
the
know that
test
story?
and he was late for class. And the teacher
This
leaned
is
over.
when
Dad.
when Dad had to go out in the hallway. Tell that
I'll
Pop.
tell the story.
He was the one who was
Ignatius,
there.
Pop knows this one.
That's the least of
They
the
know
stories
that.
about your father. They get better and better.
We'll get a couple later, let me put it on pause. What's this one, when Ed was playing?
Then he went to Morgan Park High School, all they had to give the ball to Wally and away he went. Then he went to Michigan and all they did was give the ball to Wally and he became an All-American.
Wally Tennigan was the
Epitome of what?
captain of Michigan, an All-American.
Oh,
He went to Sutherland and then he went to Morgan Park. And
the only
he was the one.
top-notch product ever to come out of Southern
Halfback
Missouri.
He was.
Halfback DeMille said he was the only elementary senior he saw. He was 170.
Oh, he was like one of those guys. You gave him the ball and 11 guys couldn't stop him. He was the Herschel Walker of our set.
I stuck my 2 cents.
Herschel Walker.
Telling that
Brian, stop
story
picking your
when
nose.
I went to the phone. He said that when you were in 7th or 8th grade, even when you graduated from 8th grade, you were one of the smaller kids in the
Oh,
class.
yeah. About 110 pounds soaking wet.
It's not that funny, though.
What news that?
This is on, and so he
He
can
knows
stop
that's his
picking
arm, so he says,
You said what?
the machine's on, so Terry yelled, stop it.
All right, get these guys going on a good story now.
Why don't you two go down and watch the movie?
How could
What
you
movies?
remember what you played when you were beating silly all the time?
I know that part was an end.
And then,
In reverse?
You weren't
that
any
night,
different,
looked at
Brian?
the wrong football game.
No, that was always an end.
One of the guys smaller than you.
Butt kicked at center, Pop thought it was his own kid. He was telling all his neighbors, oh yeah, it stinks.
There he is. I was probably on the bench. Some other guys might get. The guy in the center, you can't see him, is that?
We're concentrating, we know he's out there, we're concentrating on the center, but he must have gone home for a moment. He's leaving it to Wally Tennigan. Well, poor old Pat died thinking you were the center on some of them.
You'll never know who the little guy was.
Guy smaller when Steve was in the Little League.
was tinier than him, God. But he was a catcher. And when he put on the, all the junk, he looked like a turtle. I'm down being a faithful father in Little League, and the guy standing next to me, and all of a sudden, a guy tries to steal. And the guy said, Jesus Christ, look at the turtle. Nailed the guy before he got I said, it is the voice of the turtle. The guy said, did you ever see anything like it? Just every day.
Just every day. She just went down the wrong pipe.
Coughing, choking,
I was laughing and drinking at the same time.
She's okay, she's laughing too hard. You gotta stop laughing, man.
You can't drink and laugh at the same time. Don't talk now either.
I quit going to the ball games with Steve because, he was a great catcher. He was really good. He couldn't hit one time. The awful thing that I used to hide my head. Once he's up in the band, he keeps looking over to see if I'm watching him. I should have gone like this. But he struck out.
He's looking at you, the ball
And
goes
the
by.
look, he gave me like, am I a jerk?
He also played goalie with all that gear.
Don,
Did he really?
Yeah, he was goalie too in hockey. He's a good goalie.
you missed out on all this because you never went in for a little.
No, I just hung out with Johnny O'Brien and Pitt Cummings.
You just
He was busy making piles.
He was blowing up the garage. Ask Pop how many times this guy blew up his garage.
Oh, the backyard to get Dad in trouble.
I don't believe he was the end who never showed up. But center, you can hardly get out of that position.
David was always all out for Little League and all that stuff, but he was in primary school. And if he didn't make the team, he was crushed and ready to leave and cry and what have you. And Steve took it real seriously, but Dad didn't have anything to tell
I
him
never
that
was in
stuff.
Little League.
He didn't care.
Don grew up worldly wise. That's all that athletics, you could get hurt. Broken bones. And I want all mine to blow up the world.
I remember in that how fleeting glory is. Best man in my wedding was probably the best athlete in our school when he went through. And he ended up like all mention, all city, Donnie Bostrom. And he got down to Illinois and he went out, and it's a quantum leap going from high school to college, especially in those days in the Big Ten. I remember sitting talking to him after the end of his freshman year, going out for football in Illinois when Ray Nussbickle was down there. Donnie went and he said it was just torture. He said, I'm like cannon fire. Every time they do a scrimmage, they put me in as the opposition guy and they work all their blitzes on him and so forth. I said, why did you? I said, well, he said, I knew I was in trouble, and the day we showed up, first they do pictures. He said, no, I felt kind of cocky, I came out, I was second string mention, all city. So there were 7 quarterbacks that came out for freshman football in lineup. 6 of them were all state somewhere, except me. And he said, that guy looked around and he said, you know, Ray, the head coach, was fawning over one of them who was sort of all Mr. Everything in Mississippi or somewhere. And then the obvious second string guy, and he said, then there were 4 more that were sort of off in a corner. And then he said they didn't have a uniform for him, you know, when he showed up. He said, I knew I was in trouble. And he was a great high school quarterback. I mean, from our standards, and he was a really very good athlete. Baseball player, basketball player, and a good football player. But he said the difference from high school to college was just that much in talent, competition, and everything else. That he said he knew he was in trouble when there were 6 all-staters.
Yeah, right.
1 All-American, 6 All-Staters, and Donnie, who was second string, mentioned, you know, for All-State.
Well, didn't he play at Illinois?
Yeah, he played for 2 years and then gave it up, wisely. Just said, you know. But he said they never, they
Did your
wouldn't,
brother
he never got a
Jim go in
chance.
Yeah.
Said he never got a chance to work a
Did your
single
brother Jim
series.
go in for
He never got a
sports
chance to
lot?
throw a ball.
My brother
He
Jim,
was
oh,
good at it,
sure.
but he said they were just
He
so
was
good.
a
It was
basketball.
amazing to
He
see
was
he's on a
coaching.
college
Never got
He
team.
coached your father, you know what I mean, and he was a manager and the coach of Aquinas when your father was playing. That's why your father and my brother Jim were very close. I didn't know your father too well, except, you know, everybody knew everybody at 55th.
Yeah.
But my brother Jim, yeah,
So he played basketball a lot then,
Yeah.
Jim?
yeah, he did. He was a very quiet guy who, he was also,
I told the story, tell them
Yeah.
the story one time about, because I told somebody recently who was trying to get me into whatever the
The
local
KCs?
council, no, it's it's not the KC's here, but,
yeah, how I got kicked out.
yeah, the scribe, tell them that. I
That
don't
was
know
the
story.
KC's.
You ever hear this?
Well, I was, and Casey basketball was, you know, it was really bigger. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
quite a bit of space in the daily papers in those days. There was no professional basketball. If there was, it would have been the KC League. Well, my brother Jim was coaching and managing and also presumably was supposed to write the Aquinas News. And I was writing it for him, it was under his name, but everybody knew I was writing it. So once I hit 18 or came close to 18, Perez, which was a very wealthy KC consul,
Must have been older than that because I knew you at the time. I didn't know you when you were 18, but go ahead.
well, at any rate, Perez came along and said, we'll give you $50 a month and, you know, run you through the KCs if you'll write for us. And I said, well, you know, I kind of
That
owe
was
it
a
to
lot
the,
of money
like,
back then,
yeah,
so
I
was that
kind of
much?
owe it to these guys in Aquinas. No sweat, write theirs too. Well, everything went along swimmingly. I'm writing 2 columns. And finally, Perez and Aquinas are in the basketball finals.
Oh, no.
So, I'm in a sweat. A kid from 55th Street playing with your father by the name of McGraw, who was a red-headed, fiery Irishman. The deputy grand knight of Perez made some remark, and Bob McGraw left the floor and ran out and punched the deputy grand knight in the nose. And this is all over the papers, you know, and it's a scandal. So what do I do? So, the first week I have to go to Aquinas, and I blame this deputy grand knight for losing his temper and his poise and not being a gentleman, not realizing poor Bob is an emotional boy out there on the floor full of. And the funny thing, now I have to go to Perez's council meeting before the next paper comes out. So I walk into Perez and a lot of guys are staring at me. But the deputy grand knight came over with tears in his eyes saying, "You were so right, and I shouldn't have done it." And I said, "Oh, wait until you see my column on you next week." So, the next week I say, you know,
You're
here's,
now writing in Perez
oh,
next week.
yeah, I'm writing Perez now.
No.
And I write, you know, what a terrible thing.
For Shaw.
Well, I don't blame Bob, I just say, for Aquinas managers, my brother, not to control the team.
This jerk running off.
Yeah,
the floor.
here's this great
Poor
man,
Grand Knight.
this deputy grand knight, who's worshipped by everybody and loved by everybody, and humiliated there, all because of the Aquinas manager not controlling his poor team. Well, so now I finished my duty to everybody, but then 2 letters came along. One to the scribe of Aquinas, one to the scribe of Perez, to show up down in the deputy grand knight of the state of Illinois, 4 o'clock. So I, about as big as he is, and I show up and sit in this little chair waiting, and this guy, oh, Mike Howlett's father, by the way. He was
Mike Howlett's father.
he was the deputy, whatever it was, Casey. I forgot to tell Mike he was old and he kicked me out. Well,
His own
this
name
guy,
was the Grand Knight.
oh, deputy of
Deputy
the
Grand
state, yeah. So, this big character is in there chewing a cigar and pacing up and down. 5 minutes go by, I can see him, and he looks out and stares at me. And he finally comes out and points a finger and says, "Which one are you?" And I said, "Which one what?" He said, "Where's the other scribe?" And I said, "I'm both." He said, "With all the publicity, with all the stuff in the papers, what do you want to do? Blow the whole KCs in America?" I said, "No, I just, well, don't do anything. Get out of here, you're kicked out of the KCs, don't ever be a KC." That was the end of my career. Oh, dear. Yeah, it was Mike Howlett's father. I often meant to tell him this.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Mike Howlett, is it Shoebox's Howlett?
No. Mike Howlett is the Secretary of State.
Yeah.
Big guy, ran for governor. No, you're thinking of Paul Powell.
Paul.
He's the guy who gave us DRH-6.
Oh, he gave you DRH-6? You still have it?
Yeah, we have that.
Young Mike is running as Adelaide Lieutenant Governor.
I saw that.
Yeah.
You know who's been very nice to us? Jim Edgar.
Oh, really? Yeah. You kept the
He still has the Illinois license.
Wow.
And they wrote letters. You know,
Keep renewing them?
well, not only that, but
Any of the 2 years were
use Davidson Glass.
Oh, is that what you're using?
Yeah.
I suppose you're voting there too. You're another
Oh,
one of
I
those great
think that
selling
is-
ghost voters.
David was supposed to do something.
You know, I was a ghost voter. I couldn't believe it. He still getting away with it. That rascal. Remember, they purged me off the rolls in Illinois a few years back. But Marty, well, you know, for years, all the time I worked for the state of Illinois, I used your address.
Yeah.
I was
Well,
one of our,
then I think it was either, maybe after you moved and Dan was in the house or somewhere, they knocked me off the rolls. Somebody challenged me out there
oh, really?
and knocked me off the rolls. But Marty Gleason said, "Oh, you didn't go the next sequel." He said, "I had that happen." And he said, "I went in." And he said, typical in the old days, the Republican
Yeah.
ward committeemen and the Democratic ward committeemen kind of get together. And when these challenges come up and they say, "Okay, you got Heffernan and Jones and Smith, we'll let them go, but you don't knock off, you know, Smith and Jones and whoever." And they're negotiating.
Still a little
So
left. I got a
Gleason
whole
said he
bunch
was
of
challenged, and he was a bad guy. But he's gone.
Yeah.
I'm only gone, I don't know, about 20 years. He's gone 27 years and he's still
Sure.
voting in 19th ward.
Right there.
Marty and Dan.
Gosh.
Is Grandma, how and Pat,
Sugar
how is
bad
she,
for the digestion.
She's a cousin,
She's
a
a
first
second
cousin.
or something cousin, I'm not sure, maybe if, I don't know. if
You allow that back.
Well, I thought she was related to the Hannibals.
No.
Trying to get.
She was only it wasn't my first cousin, it's anything like that close, but she was always, you know, around the house and everything, as long as I didn't do anything, that was a real good, she and they were, Mary, real good friends of Mary's and this, they were always around. Graduations, birthdays, whatever.
Did they grow up, Pop, in, back of the arts? I mean, did they grow up at
Oh, yeah,
55th,
their,
the Pats?
their father had one of the biggest saloons, on 42nd, 43rd, between Wentworth and State. Very popular. And then her father died and her brother took over. And her brother was a short guy, and between wrestling, beer kegs and that sort of stuff. He died, but he had a hemorrhage on the brain or something. And in those days, you know, they couldn't do anything about him. He had been half nuts. So then the mother and the girls sold the saloon. The mother was, I think, a first cousin of my father's. She wasn't
Your
his
side of the
mother's.
family, anyway.
Was Gerald your mother's only sister? Aunt Gerald? Pat?
No, she had another sister, Kit, who died years.
Oh, I didn't even know about that.
My father
Kit?
died.
Kit.
Kit, yeah, Kit was the oldest of the family, and she died a little before my father died. And then, after all, my mom and some parts of girls, there was one named Maud who died when she was 4 years old or something.
My
How
wife,
many kids were in
my
your
wife
family?
was the most
Just you and your
spoiled.
brother?
My wife was the most spoiled child in Beverly Hills. Between our
She was in
aunts.
Beverly
Wait a second, I thought it was in Beverly Hills, I
It was
was
Michigan
Fifth
Avenue.
Street, Michigan Avenue.
And our fox jackets and diamond rings.
That was.
Oh, they had
when
moved
I
out
was
to
in-
Long Drive before they were married.
She was
No,
spoiled.
yeah, they moved out to Longland before we were married, but not when I was growing up, we didn't live out there.
When we got
Ah,
married,
she
I
lived
had
on
to
Michigan
go all the
Avenue.
What he meant was you were spoiled on Michigan
She was
Avenue.
spoiled.
Yeah.
She was spoiled in Beverly Hills too. Terrible.
She
And Aunt
was
Joe.
I never lived in Beverly Hills until after.
She wasn't spoiled, you were just
From
impoverished.
high school.
How do you, oh, well, you lived there long enough for me to make that awful ride from also on a
That
streetcar.
was after we graduated from high school that I moved out, we moved out.
Out Ashland Avenue?
Huh?
Did you go out Ashland or out Western? Where did the
Oh,
streetcar go?
Halston to 111th.
Halston and Sandal and it turned west on 111.
Oh, is that how it worked then, not Ashland? Huh?
What, to
Because Ashland just went
Vincennes?
to
The
95th.
streetcar went down, I think it was
Halston.
Halston,
Yeah,
and
so
then
111.
Vincennes.
Vincennes, and then up
Out to
111th.
111th and west to Morgan Park or whatever, not Morgan
Oh, you
Park.
mean you cut off Halsted way down, like the 83rd or something on the
Yeah.
Vincennes? Oh, okay, yeah, and then Vincennes up to 111.
Did the streetcar ever run down Western Avenue? All the way
Oh,
out?
I didn't
yeah,
go
streetcar
there, first you go to
ran
95th, then I went to 111th.
111.
Later.
But
Yeah.
that
Not-
was
not
later.
no-
Not
that
a
was later.
streetcar bus, they were a streetcar to go.
Not a streetcar. Well, I had a, why, if I didn't have frostbitten noses and fingers standing on the corner of 111th to Logan
Long
Drive,
Drive.
no streetcar.
No, the
Kick.
first time it came out, I just went out to, I went out with you once or twice when I was in high school the last year. After we moved out there that summer. The first date we had, we were supposed to come out. You got, wherever you live down there, we got on this the streetcar, which went out, Vincennes and over 111, get off at 111 and Longwood.
Walked
You
up.
know where Grandma lived. Okay, well, we get about a half a block from 111th and along where the street curves up
It
there.
was.
Yeah, right,
Oh,
it's up the
yeah.
hill.
Mark Military.
You went the wrong way, up went the wrong way.
I went up that way.
He never showed up. He went home.
I couldn't find 150.
You were walking?
Well, from,
Well,
he
like,
got
you
off.
say, get out
the
the streetcar and
at
walk up the hill?
111 Longwood, and we lived at 113th and
Yeah,
Longwood.
I know, there's a road that curves right up the hill, right by Ed Steffi's house.
So I went up the hill. My
Yeah.
aunt did the same thing. Well, after he did this, he came back around
You
and
never
down,
told him
he said, Dale,
Took on board this day.
Go back on the streetcar, huh?
Oh, and then, you know, I hardly got home when the phone was ringing. And of course, you know what she said, you're SOB.
How did you
Your
meet?
job, SOB.
How did you two meet?
Huh?
How did you meet?
Where did you meet?
Oh,
Oh,
the deal was out there.
we met at the dinner
Yeah,
SOB.
it was going to be, no, you had graduated.
Were you
from
like the
Venus.
dancer?
Huh?
Were you like Fred Astaire?
She said, well, you're a good dancer.
Did you have to wear your called
Oh,
twinkle
God,
toes?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
You didn't dance at Sheila's wedding?
Well, I already had the cane and was hopping around, so I wasn't doing very well
I
there.
was still gracefully
enough.
swinging around.
That's right.
Did grandma sweep you off your feet?
Were you
She
snowed?
said that I sweep you off your feet.
Oh, heavens, yes. I babbled.
It's supposed to be the other way around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Did she
supposed to
play
be the
hard
other
to
way
get?
around, but you're right. She wouldn't let go of me. She had me, and she wouldn't let me go.
Now, what made you go to a De La Salle dance when you had already graduated?
Oh, well, this was a funny thing. You know, I had been in the plays with Gilliman's father, and then I went back after I graduated to half coach, you know, the next year's play.
Oh.
And so, and it was the dramatic club that gave the dance. And so I had to go there. And one of the guys in the dramatic presentation play, whatever it was that year, brought Ruth to the dance. And he had been going out with her, and we danced, and I said, you know, could I see you again? And she was so glad to get somebody over. There's the payoff,
Who was the poor guy who got stiffed?
Barney, Barney or Bernie, but they call him Barney or her.
Barney O'Hearn.
It was the baton twirler, the band was. Well, anyway, the poor guy, he came down to the office to see.
6 years later.
Yeah, all not years later.
Of course,
no.
it was after we were married, it wasn't.
Oh, no, not. He came to see me.
To the office.
He had a date with Ruth. And
Well,
he-
why did he come to see you? What do you mean?
Well,
to
he
the
wanted me
office?
to
You
tell
weren't
him
working at the
how
county
to win you, so he could have her.
I don't know
So
why
I
this-
coached,
Miles Standing.
you know, I'm coaching the dramatic.
This
club.
has the
I
familiar
have
ring.
to coach him how to go out and win you back. But
You did it incorrectly.
Well,
Yeah,
Better
his
back.
worst
Oh.
coaching job.
Yeah.
I worried through the day, did I do too good a job? Well, the guy convinced her that, but he didn't. He was bumbling Joe.
Well, how long did you know each other before you got married? Did you have a short?
2 weeks.
Oh, that's my brother. My brother was only kind of an situation. Must have been a couple of years.
Yeah, it was a
That was when we were in high school.
How old were you when you met?
Well, I was in high school.
You know what really
16,
won her?
She was
17.
16.
16 when you met?
Well, I was only 19 when I married him. I have to figure it out at just 19. Now,
You know why she
I was
married
still
him?
in high school.
She was going to Rosary, you know, he used to write her
No,
themes.
I wasn't going. When I went to the De La Salle dance, that
No,
was
no.
not Rosary.
I said, how long were we going together? You were going to Rosary.
After I met you.
Yeah, and I said, you finally, when clinched, it was I wrote your compositions.
No, you didn't.
She threw those drafts
Yeah,
out.
you would have turned those in, right?
She pretended just to make you happy, and she
Yeah,
just chucked them.
Right.
She was the valedictorian, wasn't she, at Carter Barron, or whatever the place was?
What?
What was your school?
Carter Barron. That's here.
What's your high
What
school?
was your grammar school?
High school.
Well, Carter Practice was the
Carter
grade
Practice,
school.
oh,
And then where'd you go to high school?
Englewood.
Inglewood, you were the valedictorian, weren't you?
No,
I thought
it
you
was in
were.
the honor society or
Oh,
something.
I thought you were the
It wasn't
president of your
valedictorian
class.
or anything like that.
The guy who wrote the Brown versus U.S. was
Oh, I knew that.
Oh,
person.
yeah, he's Robert Ming.
Uh-huh.
We went to.
I mean,
well, he was the lawyer
They
who,
were 1 and 2.
brought the
also.
case, but yeah, I should say wrote it. That was a justice.
Bob said it was a lie. She was always
He
first
was
and I was
just being
second.
polite.
He was a pretty bright guy.
He was
Oh,
being
very
polite.
polite.
At the University of Chicago. Never could understand.
Didn't you tell me, somebody told me about me, yeah, he died.
Oh, yeah. He was
Yeah, we
broken
can
heart.
get into that.
Oh, the tax problem.
Well, I got, but not only that, but I think he saw, the Jesse Jacksons and all those taking over, and he didn't like it.
Yeah. No, it was a shame that he got into tax fraud.